Hello, everybody. Let's talk about motivation. And before we start, I want to do a little exercise with you, and I'd ask you to close your eyes if you want and just concentrate on how you're feeling right now. And what do you experience if I ask you, how motivated do you feel right now? Just concentrate on that feeling, what you associate with motivation, with that word being motivated. And now go back a little bit and think about when you pressed the button to buy your ticket here. What did you feel then? What motivated you to press that button? How did it feel? Did it feel good? Probably. Then how did you feel when you arrived here this morning? When you entered this event? Did you feel motivated? So you can open your eyes again. For whom being motivated is a positive feeling? Hands up. Pretty much for everyone, right? It's a positive feeling. It's an emotion. You feel positive. So who would say that you felt more motivated buying the ticket than entering the building? Hands up. Okay. So again, who felt motivated buying the ticket? Is everybody? Who felt motivated this morning? Did anybody has that experience of, oh my God, I had to go to that summit. I bought that ticket a couple of weeks ago. Hell no. And now I have to listen to all those talks. Who felt that way? I guess. Oh, unprecedented. I guess that was a joke. Okay. But anyways, motivation has several aspects that I want to target today. And I want to make it really simple for you what motivation is. And also, another question for you, like who had a childhood dream that you pursued for a long time? Could be becoming a firefighter or an artist or an actor or an athlete. Who of you had this kind of dream? Hands up. And who pursued this dream for longer than, let's say, 10 years? Let's say you developed it as a child and you took it all the way to being a grown-up. Okay, a couple people. All right. Because that's pretty much what happened with me. My story is I grew up being absolutely crazy about basketball. And I got a ball in my hands when I was about 5 years old and felt like I was good at it, I guess, and kept going. And it motivated me to get up every morning. It kept me away from drugs, from alcohol, from smoking. It made me eat well, go to bed early, even get a scholarship in the United States to play in college. And that's kind of where I put that dream to rest, also where I put that motivation to rest to become a professional basketball player, because then I noticed, okay, maybe I'm not as talented as some of the other guys. And I did play with some very talented people, and one actually just made it into the world's best basketball league, the NBA. His name is John Holland, a good friend of mine, and he played with maybe arguably the best basketball player of all time, with Michael Jordan, LeBron James last season. And so he was so motivated to even take it all the way. And after I played, I was actually the first time confronted with that idea of motivation, because for me, it was never hard to motivate myself. It was always easy. I had that big dream of getting to the NBA, of hitting that last second buzzer, of having teammates cheering me on, of having 20,000 people watch me and millions on television. And that motivated me every day. And then after I quit playing, I fell, like many athletes, like many performers do, into a deep hole. I lost my goal. I lost my motivation. I still had somehow energy, but it was completely undirected. It was a frustrating energy. Frustration is actually a great energy if you have a goal, but it's a terrible energy if you have no goal. It can be quite destructive. So for many people, it's quite hard to get motivated. That's what I noticed then after my career. Now I actually coach hundreds of people with my business in Germany. And I noticed that usually for them, it's quite easy to start a change. When someone changes something, they have a pain point, and then they start something, it feels good. But once that pain point goes away a little bit, they lose motivation. It's really hard then to get up, to go to the gym, to motivate you to keep eating well. So it's usually like that. And then you go back down, the yo-yo effect. It's really hard losing weight. So your motivation is shaped by different things. And in this talk, I don't want to really go into the different theories and intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and the factors. And there are a ton of them. There's environment and culture and values and your family. And everyone is telling you something, and your experiences and your education, and they lead you to do what you eventually do. Because motivation, in the end, is the sum of all the motives that cause us to do anything, pretty much. So whenever we do something, we are motivated in some way or another. This is the definition of motivation. Now, it also is the motivated pursuit to act, to pursue a goal. So it actually has three aspects that I want to explain a little later. Now, one question that I found quite interesting, and in my research I came across, was, is motivation genetic? And there's certainly a genetic component. And why I'm showing you this image is because there's a controversy going on right now because of a warrior gene. They call it the warrior gene. It's a gene variant, MAO minus A. And if you have that gene variant, you pretty much don't break down serotonin as easily, a neurotransmitter that is associated with feeling in love and feeling aggressive. And so if it's not broken down properly, you produce more dopamine. It's less goal-directed, though, and you become more impulsive. So what they noticed is that people with that gene variant, they are in generally more aggressive, more impulsive. It's not as goal-directed behavior. It's just energy and it's bursting out. And there's a study done actually with the Maori people. So this is an image of the rugby team of New Zealand who came up with that haka dance that you might know. Kamate, kamate. Really impressive to intimidate the opponents. You can watch it on YouTube. It's highly impressive how they perform it. And among males, apparently they have that gene variant. And it's so important now in science that there's actually 2 cases of murders where sentences have been lessened because the murderers have been found to be associated with that gene variant. And so some neuroscientists, they say it's not really a reason to lessen a sentence when you have a reason why they do that. So they still behave violently now only because we know why they did it. Does it deserve a lesser sentence? That's another discussion. But anyways, I want to take you through that motivational feedback loop so you can really take away something that you can apply to your own life. So probably what happened when I was a boy and I had a ball in my hand, my mom gave me a basketball and I hit it, and my brain produced dopamine, the neurotransmitter that makes you feel pleasure, happiness, rewarding. It's very, very rewarding. So you have a chemical reaction. That leads to an emotion, like I asked you in the beginning. That's why I asked you, how does it feel? It feels good. Motivation feels good. If it doesn't feel good, I might not repeat it. So dopamine shows me, okay, this is rewarding. You might want to keep going. So, okay, I'm good at this. Let's keep going. So the next step in motivation, so dopamine makes you feel rewarded. In the next sense, you sort of anticipate the reward the next time you do the same behavior. And then the pursuit of that happiness starts. That's the third step. So you develop a goal. For me, that was, wow, I want to play in the NBA. I see my idol, Dirk Nowitzki, play in the NBA, being cheered on. I want to have that for myself. This is my goal. And so this goal leads to further behavior. So I practice. So I go get up at 5 a.m. to practice. I sort of confront that pain because I know the reward is going to come later. And then I repeat the whole segment because the next time I practice, I might beat my opponent. I produce again more dopamine. So on, the whole process starts again. So what's happening in the brain? There's actually, well, a lot of areas where dopamine is being produced, and dopamine is central to motivation. That's why I'm going to focus on this neurotransmitter. And there are 3 areas that play a role here. The ventral tegmental area, which projects to the nucleus accumbens, which projects to the prefrontal cortex. And so if any of these areas are damaged, then things go wrong. For example, we heard before in a presentation, with Parkinson's. Parkinson's is pretty much a disease where dopamine production is inhibited in some way, and you give L-Dopa. This is actually the medication that you give in order to treat it as well. You can also use different techniques such as deep brain stimulation, as we heard before, and you can normalize the production again. But these areas are very important. So when this is what research shows right now, so very powerful drugs like cocaine or heroin or alcohol, they activate the release of dopamine. They activate the neurons that eventually feel rewarding, produce hormone, the neurotransmitter that feels really rewarding. So that is, in a sense, at first good. It feels good. However, if it takes too long, we all know it can be quite addicting. At the same time, it can be very dangerous. You can actually hurt your brain. The opposite, when you experience stress, pain, or if you feel ill, then you inhibit the sensitivity of your dopamine neurons. You don't produce dopamine, which can cause anhedonia, which is the inability to feel pleasure. And that is the major sign of what we know as depression. So, as I showed you before, there are 3 elements that are central. Like I said, I want to make it very simple for you. So, reward. How does that work? I get triggered. For example, I drink a glass of beer, release dopamine, I feel good, it feels rewarding. What is the problem here? We get habituated quite quickly to the effect. So, every time I drink, I produce less and less and less, and it becomes not as rewarding anymore. And that is the quick effect of habituation. Everyone knows that who pursues anything. It doesn't never feel as good as the first time. So the next step is the anticipation. That's actually much more important. So we attribute a context to the feeling of reward. For example, you like a cup of coffee in the morning. The first time you drink it, or second time, it feels rewarding the time you drink it. At some point, already hearing the grinder or smelling the beans releases dopamine and you feel rewarding. So context matters. And that can also be quite important and also detrimental. For example, for alcoholics. Alcoholics who want to stay clean, who want to stay sober, and they walk by a bar and smell beer, that context triggers dopamine and they feel really motivated to drink again. What's the problem that we notice more and more here now? Another very addicting thing nowadays is our smartphone. So I just yesterday saw a teenager at a bus stop, and you noticed on his face that he was about to get bored. In my childhood, that was still a thing. Nowadays, phone out, scrolling down. Because what happens when they look on YouTube or on Facebook, they release this burst of dopamine. It feels rewarding. They already attribute the smartphone with something rewarding. And why is it so rewarding? Because we don't really see it, that it's so rewarding. But that's sort of the myth or the fascination with gambling. Our brain actually produces more dopamine if we are not sure if you're finding something. So let's say I get a reward 100% of the time. So I put in the work and I get the reward. They did that study with monkeys. So they press a lever 10 times and they get the grape. So they produce dopamine. So when they press 10 times, but they're not sure, 50% of the time they don't get the grape and 50% they get the grape, they actually produce more dopamine. So that's why gambling works. So when I'm not sure, and the casinos are great in making it look like you have a great chance of beating the casino. You never do, really. At least as a group of people, you never do, but they make it look like it. Also, the idea of the reward in general really feels a lot greater than the reward itself. So that means also when I go on Facebook, the idea of going on Facebook and scrolling down and seeing all these interesting things, that feels more rewarding than actually going on it. And then after you feel like, oh, why did I go on it? It was terrible. Like, I should really stop. I should leave my smartphone at home. I should shut it off. But the next time it feels again, the idea feels good. Or, oh, I'm going to go home tonight and watch Netflix with my girlfriend and drink a glass of wine. The idea is often a lot nicer than the act itself later, which is also okay. We can use it to our advantage. So I'll show you this picture because for me, it's often when I go skiing and I hear already the sound of the snow underneath my boots, then I already feel that pleasure. Oh, wow. And oftentimes I endure a whole day of skiing with snow and rain, and it's terrible just for these 20 seconds of bliss when you get that perfect ground down. So alone the idea is already rewarding. Problem again, like I said, is context. Now, moving on to the third part, it's pursuit. And this is sort of what I also want to leave you with today, because I think that's the essence of motivation. Nowadays, there's so many boosters that we have in our environment to have immediate dopamine release, like Netflix, smartphone, YouTube, Facebook. Then there's a lot of healthy boosters as well. And if you want to check them out, I definitely recommend to buy the Biohacker's Handbook and also to listen to all the speakers, because there's so many different things that you can use. Now, when you have that goal to pursue, which is really worthwhile pursuing, they showed, there's a Stanford researcher named Robert Sapolsky, that you release dopamine every time. And actually, the closer you get to that reward, the more dopamine you can release. The reward itself, then, it's not that actually impressive. So for me, it was writing a book. Writing a book, the idea of it was great. Eventually, when it came out, I didn't even feel that rewarded. So actually, the process itself, so it was less about the pursuit of happiness. It was more about the happiness of pursuit. And that's important. Now, if you have a goal that's worthwhile pursuing, then it can be quite fulfilling to do that. And we as human beings are the only species that can have goals that even extend our own lifetime. For example, if I save money to give back to my children later on, no other animal does that. But that's motivating. So I feel like, should I buy this maybe non-donut or save it for my children later? I might save it and it feels good. So if you have goals like that, it makes them very rewarding if you pursue them and you produce dopamine that way. The problem here is how to find the why. And now, what can you do to hack the motivation? Like I said, if you want an instant burst, and that's the problem, you can use supplement, there are dopamine boosters all around. The problem with them is there's a drug called modafinil, which will increase your production of dopamine. I actually don't know how it actually works. But if it's not directed, it can cause problems. I had a friend, he really wanted to study for an exam. He took modafinil in order to concentrate better, to be motivated to study the whole night. And in the morning, I asked him, hey, how did the studying go? And he's like, I was really motivated, but I ended up studying the coordinates of oil ships all over the world, because he didn't think about what he wanted to get motivated for. So the first thing he found, and it ended up being coordinates for oil ships, he started focusing on that. He was motivated to research them for no apparent reason. So my advice is start with why. And that sentence doesn't come from me. There's a great guy called Simon Sinek. He wrote a book, which is called that way, Start with Why. And the why doesn't have to be that major thing. It doesn't have to be, I'm saving the planet or I'm moving to Mars. It can be a small why. It can be, hey, why do you go to the gym? I'm a healthy, positive person. That's your why. Could be your why. You can have many whys. You can have, hey, why do you save money? Hey, I'm a stingy person. No, but you can have multiple whys that will explain the behavior that you actually want. And I urge you to think more about longer time frames. Like, how do you want to live your life in 15, 20 years? Or how do you want to live in maybe 150 years? You want to get to 180 years? Then, okay, I'm a person who will live 180 years. That's why I'm behaving that way. That's why I'm eating that way. That's why I'm at this conference, for example. So my life, my dream of playing in the NBA shaped my life. Like I explained, I stayed away from drugs. I ate healthy. I didn't drink alcohol. I had good friends that motivated people around me that also pursued dreams. I got an education only because of that one dream. So all my little goals that many people have, like losing weight, staying fit, for me, these were symptoms of a bigger goal. So think more about this bigger goal. So if you're interested in that, research that I used, I recommend a couple books here. There's one called Behave by Robert Sapolsky. I think this guy is genius. Would be a great speaker, actually. So I want to leave you with one last quote, Benjamin Franklin. So living in the moment is great. I'm all about flow. But if you fail to plan for the long term, you might plan to fail. So think about these long-term goals. That's my message for today. Thank you.